What did 157 senators, congressmen, celebrities, and journalists have to argue about in 1984? You should know. It's your business.
From Washington, D.C., beginning its 6th year on the air, the United States Chamber of Commerce presents It's Your Business, a weekly series of debates on vital issues affecting you. And now the moderator of It's Your Business, Meryl Comer.
Welcome. 1984 was nothing less than a banner political year. President Reagan swept into a second term on a landslide vote, though the balance of power in Congress remains much the same. Republicans control the Senate, Democrats the House. As for a post-election honeymoon the second time around, well, forget it. Battle lines are already being drawn over the budget deficit and tax reform. At issue 1984, a year-end review, where it went and what got done. First, we hear from the journalists and political analysts never at a loss for words over the ramifications of Election 84.
The key to whether the Republican Party is a viable institution is the post-Reagan period. And the post-Reagan period begins, if he is reelected, on January 20th, 1985. Because the fact is that as a result of some small-minded conservative men 40 years ago who had wreaked posthumous vengeance upon Franklin Roosevelt by enacting a constitutional amendment that limits a president to 2 terms, Ronald Reagan is a lame duck. As of, at the very latest, Labor Day 1985.
Our form of government was indeed a rebellion against big government and a celebration of individual rights. And we've come so far in the other direction, and people are wanting now to return to that, to limit the growth of government and limit the taxation and limit the intrusion into our lives. And that is the new wave of the future. The Democratic Party recognized that some years back, but they didn't do anything with it. They left someone jerk the rug out from under them and take it all the way to the left peg.
The depth of what an election provides in terms of long-range policies and programs, it's hard to sit and analyze or talk about. The fact that we may lose some Democrats in the House, the fact that Ronald Reagan may win a major landslide kind of victory, all of that doesn't mean that the Republican Party will now become something that it hasn't been. It is still a small, narrow party in this country, frankly, run by a very small group of conservatives.
Said in a very objective way.
Tell me what happens. How do you assess the growing number of those voters who like to call themselves independents, that really refuse to align themselves one way or the other?
Well, I think that was a trend that we saw very much in the 60s and 70s. And what we had in this country was not a realignment, but we had something that many people call a de-alignment. People were moving away from parties. The significant question and the significant movement that is now occurring does seem to be in a more conservative direction, does seem to be in the direction of the Republican Party. I think there is the very large question for whether the Republicans can govern successfully in the next 4 years and hold that, keep that trend moving. There's an equally large question of whether the Democrats can reassess who they are, what they stand for, and become a more appealing party. I think both parties have a lot of soul-searching to do, and a Republican side, it's going to be terribly important, not just to try to win this election, but to make the next 4 years successful years.
When we continue, 18 issues and 32 opinions to go. Stay with us.
They say it takes a big computer company to build a big computer.
Sure, who else?
But Goodyear said, "Wanna bet?" and built a supercomputer for NASA.
Goodyear did?
Yeah, the aerospace group.
Goodyear's computer can add or subtract 6.5 billion times a second. It's one of the world's fastest computers. See what you can do when you don't listen to what they say. Goodyear.
Motor Trend magazine puts cars to the test. And now every test run is made with Shell SU2000 Super Unleaded Gasoline. Patented Shell SU2000 is one of the highest octane gasolines you can buy, and it fights critical engine deposits that can cause knock. Try the gasoline Motor Trend uses. Shell SU2000.
Historically, presidential elections are decided over economic issues. On the campaign trail, President Reagan took credit for recovery, but sidestepped any responsibility for the huge budget deficit. After all, it was up to the 98th Congress to figure out where to spend and what to cut.
And we don't have a tight budget. We've got a very loose budget, and we need to go in and extract the waste, fraud, abuse, the index programs, or whatever out of the federal budget.
Let me just give you a couple examples. The 1985 budget that Ronald Reagan submitted has a 48.6 increase in foreign aid. This president wants a balanced budget. He says his economic policy is working. He asked Congress the last days of the last session to add $8.5 billion to the International Monetary Fund. In order to get that, he had to deal with the liberals to add another $15 billion for housing. That's why we've got these deficits. We've got defense expenditures up 14% in this budget. And the year before it was 12%. We've got to have a moderate growth in defense without trying to buy every blankety-blank weapon there is in 1 year or 3 years. And it's time we get to it.
I agree with Senator DeConcini, but everything that is spent in that budget comes through our committee, comes through the Appropriations Committee. Right? We are the ones who appropriate all those funds. The President doesn't have one thing to do with it. Now, if we want to really tackle it, and I think we've seen how the two of us have been able to tackle it, that we need to be able to bring over half of that committee along with us, because that's where the spending's done. It's not done from the White House, but it's done by the Congress.
On the international front, the strong U.S. dollar made the U.S. a safe haven for foreign investors looking to take advantage of high interest rates, low inflation, and political stability. A strong dollar also worked against American exports, making imports cheaper. But the Treasury Department refused to intervene.
If we were to go back to the inflationary policies of the latter 70 that Fred referred to, the dollar would go down the tube. We're not going to do that.
Why not just try and do something about it?
We're going to keep inflation under control, and in that kind of an environment, we will have a reasonably strong dollar most of the time.
Why not just try and reduce the federal deficit by being responsible and recognizing that spending has to come down and that we have to raise some revenue? Because when we went berserk in 1981 with the tax cut, we cut more revenue than we could afford to cut, and as a result of that, we have these yawning deficits that have to be brought down.
If we go the tax route, as the congressman suggests, all that does is encourages spending and reduces profitability from investment, reduces incentives to save, to invest. What we want to do is to control government spending and let growth in the economy pull the deficit down. Furthermore, I would add, there is absolutely no evidence, even though it sounds a little peculiar, that large deficits cause high interest rates, nor is there any evidence that various interest rate spreads between the dollar and other rates have a significant effect on the level of the dollar. So that is just wrong.
Despite economic recovery, a record trade deficit forced us to question whether some type of industrial policy was in order.
The fact of the matter is we have a policy for virtually every sector in the entire United States. We have a defense policy, and everybody thinks we ought to. We have an energy policy, and everybody thinks we ought to. We have an agricultural policy, and everybody thinks we ought to. We have an urban policy, et cetera, et cetera. But when it gets to the question of having a policy for United States industry, well, then it almost sounds un-American.
What we need to do as a nation is provide an environment where business can operate and successfully and make a profit. This means tax reductions in tax rates to allow for capital formation. The government planning and centralized planning, and it is centralized government industrial planning, and if Washington makes a mistake with this board that's going to have this super bureaucracy and make these decisions instead of allowing the market to make it, then we'll all be off base and all be wrong. If we leave it out in the free market for free men to make those determinations through free institutions, we won't all be wrong or we won't all be right.
It was the Democrats in Congress who pushed for an industrial policy. Now the Democrats in Congress have vowed to wait out the president on a call for a tax hike. My question to political analysts mid-November, how long will they have to wait?
If it looks like we are having as large a deficit next year as some of the indications now may suggest, I think the financial markets may react to the lack of a deficit compromise, including perhaps even a small tax increase. So I think the president has really got to lay groundwork in December and January, facing a possible need to really bite the bullet by spring.
Tax simplification, what does that really mean, Jim?
Well, the general interpretation is that he's going to simplify our taxes upward. What you'll get is a lower rate, but the elimination of a lot of loopholes and tax shelters. I suspect for the middle class it'll amount to something of a tax increase. If you're going to try to reduce the deficit, that's what you got to do.
Our tax code is a nightmare, so simplification is long overdue. But I hope that the Congress keeps these two issues separate, whether or not to raise taxes and whether or not to simplify them. The temptation is always to simplify and then throw in a little increase for everyone. And the more you simplify, the easier that becomes.
The idea of tax simplification is enticing. The problem is that it requires a lot of pain on the part of a lot of people who tend to be more powerful than others. People who operate in tax shelters tend to be your friends, Mr. Lesher, in the business community. Even though they talk about having simplified taxes and stuff, they really enjoy all those shelters. And the tax lawyer fraternity, the tax accountant fraternity, all those lobbyists who hover around the House Ways and Means Committee and the Senate Finance Committee, I mean, those people are very powerful, and they don't want to give up those loopholes.
In the debate over higher taxes and whether we can reform our tax system in a way that keeps it fair and simple, veteran Congressman Barber Conable, Republican of New York, retiring after 20 years in Congress, 18 spent as a member of the tax-writing House Ways and Means Committee, put it this way.
There's a big gap between perception and reality here. If what the people think is what's real in a democracy, then if the current system is unfair, people think it must be changed. However, if you're going to change it, you better be sure you're changing it to something better in terms of ability to pay and the appropriate allocation of the burden.
When we come back, our year-end review looks at those sticky social issues of '84, many of which never got resolved.
Gifts of gold or silver coins have almost always increased in value. Some of the silver dollars Grandma handed out are worth hundreds today. And a $10 gold piece given back in '32 could be worth thousands now. For the first time, you can give Olympic gold and silver U.S. coins. And although no one knows what Olympic coins will be worth tomorrow, they make a gift that will be cherished this holiday and for generations to come. Available at many locations, or call this number toll-free for information.
It's possible, you know. It's possible to become too dependent on energy from other countries. But that energy can be taken away. To help avoid depending too much on energy imports for our electricity, we use energy resources found here at home, like coal and nuclear energy. And we try to use all our energy sources efficiently. Coal and nuclear energy. They're part of the homegrown energy America can count on.
December of '84 was as good a time as any for some familiar faces to say thanks but no thanks to a second time around with President Reagan. Education Secretary Terrell Bell was the first of the Reagan cabinet to tender his resignation. Appearing on It's Your Business, Secretary Bell did not mince words on what it would take to upgrade education.
Of course there has to be growth. And out of the new teachers that entered the profession in 10 years, 80% of them are gone. And unfortunately, most of them that score the highest in the academically are the ones that leave. I'm telling you that we've got to change the way we recognize and reward and compensate our teachers, and higher education has learned how to do that. I keep coming back to that. That system works. It isn't perfect. It has flaws, but it's a lot better than this dreadful sameness that we have with the salary schedule, where we have to pay the worst at the level of the best in order to pay the best what they're worth.
Over at the Environmental Protection Agency, Administrator William Ruckelshaus announced his resignation, denying reports he quit over new budget cuts targeted for EPA. September of this year, Ruckelshaus reiterated what brought him back to EPA in the first place.
Let me say that the fact that I came back and we've had a 53% increase is at least a tacit admission that we overdid it, that we cut too far. There isn't any other domestic agency in this government that has gone up 53% in the last 18 months the way EPA has. Now, to me, the mark of leadership is whether you recognize a problem and do something about it. There was a problem at EPA. That's why I'm back there.
The politics of trade also made the 98th Congress more openly impatient with countries that place unfair restrictions on American imports.
If you represent an area like I do, where you have the highest unemployment in the country, 17%, the unemployment went up instead of down. We have to have specific solutions to those types of problems. For instance, the Chrysler situation, which the Chamber was so concerned about, and if I remember, opposed.
We were not involved in that.
Well, a lot of people in the Chamber, let me put it that way, opposed the Chrysler loan. We have to have answers to specific problems, and we think the steel industry, for instance, is a specific problem and needs that kind of a solution.
Right, but Ambassador Brock, there's an objection to the U.S. trade policy, and they say that it's been nothing more than a series of ad hoc response to isolated threats. Now, does that go on as well?
No, you know, you've got laws on the books to protect us against unfair trade practices. They've got to be enforced. If you don't do that, then nobody's going to convince the American people that free trade is a legitimate long-term goal. But once you've done that, the second stage of the argument that we're being asked to do now is to put on new quotas by law above and beyond the protection against unfair trading practices, and that's very different. That's just raw, pure protectionism.
The Statue of Liberty, a symbol of freedom in our open-door immigration policy, is now undergoing a facelift and closed to visitors. What was opened and closed again this year was any congressional action on the politically sensitive and controversial issue of immigration reform. Senator Alan Simpson, Republican of Wyoming and co-sponsor of the Simpson-Mazzoli bill, summed up the dilemma this way.
Hispanic leadership is out of touch with their community. The Roper poll, the Gallup poll, the Hart-Terrence poll, the Spanish Information Network exit polls, and the recent Democratic primaries all disclose that Hispanic American citizens want immigration reform, and that they also know what employer sanctions are, penalties, and that's knowingly. I notice the word knowingly gets left out here. That's an employer who knowingly hires an illegal, undocumented person, and that's a tremendous difference. And so you have that, and they also know what amnesty is, and there's no amnesty going to be in America without this bill.
At a time when the national focus is on fiscal restraint, talk of poverty remains a sore spot on the nation's psyche. Our show that questioned the success of government programs for the poor prompted the most viewer mail of 1984.
First thing we have to recognize, poor people are poor, but they're not fools. And if we have government programs that subsidize poverty, that pay people to be poor, we're going to find more poverty. That is, we have all kinds of programs that encourage long periods of unemployment. We have programs that encourage illegitimacy. We have programs that encourage slovenliness. And if you have subsidized something, you'll get more of it. I'm not surprised at all.
Mr. Palmer, Dr. Williams is suggesting that we've created a culture of poverty with all these programs. Would you agree? Yeah.
Well, I think that's an exaggeration. There is some risk that can happen among some parts of the population, but most of the things he cited are equally as prevalent among the middle class and the upper middle class who are not beneficiaries of these programs. I think they're societal problems more than they are problems of the poverty population per se.
No, that's not what Walter said at all. Walter was saying that if you have an incentive to have a split family, to have the father in the family living somewhere else or pretending to live somewhere else so you can qualify for welfare, then you're going to have someone playing that game.
But the proportion of higher income families who are split is just as high as the proportion of low income
families. But that's not true. I'd like to interstate, 55% of black babies born each year are born out of wedlock. This isn't something entirely new among black people. Back in 1940, illegitimacy rate was around 12%. Now, white illegitimacy is around 9%. Now, this just didn't happen. I believe it was encouraged by the various programs. And I'm not into a moral bag about illegitimacy, but it's a hell of a start on life to be born and find out that your mother is 14 years old and your grandmother's 30. That's almost a written guarantee that you will be poor yourself.
The sleeper issue of 1984 was industrial homework. The symbolic issues tangled in this debate: individual rights, free enterprise versus regulation designed to protect workers from abuse.
We're talking about the right to be able to support your family. We're talking about the right to be able to do it in the privacy of your home. These are important rights, and I think that you're dwelling in 1945 terms, and it's time to get into 1984.
New Labor Department regulations now say it's okay to work out of your home. Simply economics also make it both necessary and desirable to keep working as long as you're able, and the law will allow. In just 15 years, 35 million Americans will be 65 or older. One debate examined the added burden an aging population places on our current government programs.
We've created 6 million new jobs in this country, thanks to Reagan's supply-side economics, if you want. In the last 3.5 years, people were bemoaning that we were never going to get this country going again. By the same token, in the next 10 years, there will be 6 million less young people, ages 18 to 24, in the workforce. The number of young people is going down, the number of jobs is going up, and the idea that somehow we have to just squeeze senior citizens out of the workforce to make room for all these other people is the most fallacious and pessimistic notion I've ever heard of.
You know, that sounds great, and it's a nice way to put your side of the question, but it's just not true. There are just so many jobs, and no matter what you do with the retirement programs, there are not going to be any more jobs.
In matters of business, 1984 was the year of mega mergers, golden parachutes, and proxy fights. T. Boone Pickens, the controversial chairman of Mesa Petroleum, dismissed his reputation as a corporate villain in the SoCal Gulf deal, saying it was a classic case of the free enterprise system at work.
There wasn't anybody that got hurt in the deal, only winners. Everybody was a winner.
Very, very little expert proof that we're getting any more efficiency, any more productivity, any more jobs, other than these inflated dollar values in the stock market.
And that debate goes on. The performance of U.S. athletes at the Summer Olympics in Los Angeles made this country proud, but watched as closely as the Games was whether amateur sports still comes out a winner when run as a straight business proposition. Our guest, Olympic gold medalist Donna DeVerona.
Part of the selling point of the Games in Los Angeles is that it exemplifies the American way. The taxpayer isn't going to pay for it. The American public is, because they have a vested interest in it. And it's run by a very astute businessman, Peter Ubroth, and a very well-coordinated organizing committee. And it may save the future Games in cities from going bankrupt when they host an Olympic.
The Summer Games turned a profit, and Los Angeles businessman Ubroth is now commissioner of baseball. On the subject of business career opportunities, what happens these days when the best man for the job happens to be a woman? Why are women stuck in middle management earning 60% of men with the same job? Is there room at the top? The debate on those questions went this way.
A woman, MBA, let's say she's 26 years old, has 3 years with the company, and you become her sponsor informally in the organization. Think of all the flack you're going to get. She's 26 years old. She's attractive. The chauvinist pigs that are your
it's
cronies.
It's the classic Mary Cunningham.
Absolutely. And so it's much easier to pick some guy to be the sponsor of. And besides, you can't invite her to your golf club on Sunday. She doesn't play golf.
And she may not want to share the locker room with you either.
She may not want to take a shower with you.
The game today is tennis, not golf.
Exactly.
And a lot of we women play golf, tennis quite well, I think. We'll take on the competition.
To which Mr. Townsend replied, when the Augusta National Golf Club closes, then we'll know that women have made a great step forward. We'll see, Mr. Townsend, we'll see. We'll be back in a moment with a special anniversary tribute.
To photograph the Earth's resources from the air, they say you need a camera that can see through clouds.
Fat chance. Can't be done.
But Goodyear said,
let's try a new way.
And developed a special kind of radar.
Goodyear?
Yeah.
the Aerospace Group.
Radar that not only sees through clouds, but gives you pictures as sharp as some cameras. Good thing we didn't listen to what they say. Goodyear.
"1984 was an important anniversary for It's Your Business. 5 years is a long run for any television show, especially one that deals with business, economics, and politics instead of good guys and bad guys. It is with pride that It's Your Business says thank you to our sponsors over the years and hundreds of guest panelists coming at things from the left and right, from Wall Street to Main Street. We'd also like to share with you a special anniversary salute from someone you all know.
Warm congratulations to my good friend Dick Lesher, President of the United States Chamber of Commerce, and to everyone who worked so hard to produce It's Your Business on this, your program's 5th anniversary. When It's Your Business first went on the air, the show represented a bold and even risky venture. Today, It's Your Business is a regular feature on no fewer than 150 television stations around the country. The program offers a stimulating and unbiased look at the business issues of the day, and I'll let you in on a little secret. I'm one of the millions of viewers who wouldn't miss it.
Thank you, Mr. President. Here's to 4 more years. That's it for our special year-end edition. I'm Meryl Comer. I hope you'll join us again next week as we look ahead to 85 and confront the issues that are your business. See you then.
It's Your Business originates from Washington, D.C. If you would like to comment on today's program, send a card or letter to It's Your Business, 1615 H Street Northwest, Washington, D.C. 20062. If you would like a transcript of today's debate, write to the same address. Enclose $1 to cover handling. It's Your Business, celebrating its 5th anniversary, salutes its viewers, sponsors, and affiliates for their continuing support. It's Your Business is produced by the Chamber of Commerce of the United States. This has been a production of BizNet, the American Business Network.